Now, just because a team dominates during the regular season, that doesn't always mean they're destined for a deep playoff run. Anything can happen in the playoffs, and we've seen some of the best NHL teams in history fall flat and choke when it mattered the most. Keeping that in mind, here are the top 6 best NHL teams to never win the Stanley Cup. The Florida Panthers 2021-22 season. After years of rebuilding, the Florida Panthers enjoyed the greatest regular season performance in franchise history during the 2021-22 season. With a record of 58 wins, 18 losses, and 6 overtime losses, they won their first ever President's Trophy with 122 points, ranking 7th on the all-time single-season points list. This team had a serious scoring touch, which was one of the main reasons why this Panther team was on the rise. They led the league with 4.11 goals per game, and their 337 total goals were the most since the salary cap era began in the 2005-2006 season. The Panthers also achieved all of this under interim coach Andrew Brunette after Joe Quenneville resigned earlier in the season. Throughout this campaign, several Panthers players enjoyed career-best performances. Jonathan Huberdeau led the club with 115 points, while captain Alexander Barkov tallied a team-leading 39 goals. Sam Reinhart netted 82 points, Carter Verhaeghe had a breakout performance with 24 goals and 55 points, and Anthony Duclair had 31 goals and 58 points. But of course, the depth didn't end there. When you look at this team's blue line, they were led by Aaron Ekblad and Mackenzie Weegar, plus they had solid goaltending from Sergei Bobrovsky and Spencer Knight. Doubling down and making sure they had the depth they needed for a deep cup run, the Panthers made some moves at the trade deadline, bringing in playmaker Claude Giroux and solid defenseman Ben Sherratt. So they make it into the postseason, and after eliminating the Washington Capitals in the opening round, which was their first playoff series win since 1996, the Panthers faced their longtime rivals and two-time defending Stanley Cup champions, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Unfortunately for the Panthers, their league-leading offense was no match for the experienced Lightning's elite defensive play, and the Panthers were swept in 4 games. The Vancouver Canucks 2010-2011 season. Throughout the history of their franchise, the Vancouver Canucks have rarely been among the NHL's dominant teams. Before this 2010-2011 season, the Canucks only reached the Stanley Cup Finals twice, but fell to the New York Islanders in 1982, and then took a loss to the New York Rangers in 1994. However, in the 2010-2011 season, they were ready to take over the league. They won the President's Trophy with 54 wins, 19 losses, and 9 overtime losses for a record of 117 points. They were led by Hall of Fame twins Daniel and Henrik Sedin, who finished first and second in team scoring. Daniel, who led the league with 104 points, won the Art Ross Trophy and the Ted Lindsay Award, while Henrik led the league with 75 assists. On top of both Sedins playing some of their best hockey, Vancouver had another Hall of Famer in goalie Roberto Luongo, who led the league with 38 wins and won the Jennings Trophy alongside backup goalie Corey Schneider. Now let's take a look at some of the key parts of their team. Centerman Ryan Kesler tallied a career-high 41 goals and took home the Selke Trophy. They also possessed a pretty deep blue line led by Kevin Bieksa, Christian Ehrhoff, Dan Hamhuis, and Alexander Edler. They also had a 50-point winger in Mikael Samuelsson, and of course a productive agitator which always helps in the playoffs in Alexander Burrows, who tallied 26 goals during the regular season. Entering the 2011 playoffs, the Canucks started off hot, defeating the Stanley Cup champion Chicago Blackhawks and rolled over the Nashville Predators and then the San Jose Sharks, making it all the way to the Cup Finals, where they had to go toe-to-toe with the Boston Bruins. The Canucks actually held a 3-2 series lead, but eventually fell in 7 games. Now, the Canucks did rebound, winning the President's Trophy the following season with 111 points, but they were bounced from the opening round in the 2012 playoffs by the LA Kings. The Washington Capitals 2015-2016 and 2016-2017 seasons. The Washington Capitals are among just 7 teams in President's Trophy history to win the award in consecutive seasons. In the 2015-2016 season, they finished with a record of 56 wins, 18 losses, and 8 overtime losses for 120 points. Their performance the following season was basically identical, with 55 wins, 19 losses, and 8 overtime losses for 118 points. led by captain and of course future Hall of Famer Alexander Ovechkin, who took home his 6th Maurice Richard trophy in the 2015-26 season with his 7th 50-plus goal season and was named to the 2nd All-Star team. Between the pipes, they had Braden Holtby, who won the Vezina Trophy and made the 1st All-Star team, while head coach Barry Trotz won the Jack Adams Award. This team had all the bones they needed to take home a cup. The Capitals' roster depth played a crucial role in their regular season success. Nicholas Backstrom was among the league's best centers, while Evgeny Kuznetsov was coming into his own. John Carlson was this team's rock on the blue line, winger TJ Oshie provided clutch secondary scoring, and winger Tom Wilson was developing into a lethal power forward who would get under everyone's skin and then go ahead and put the puck in the net. This team had so much going for it, and yet it was their arch rivals, the Pittsburgh Penguins, who won the Stanley Cup in back-to-back seasons. The Capitals failed to reach the Eastern Conference Finals, falling to the Penguins in the second round in 2016 and then again in 2017. Up until that point, the Capitals hadn't gotten past the second round since reaching the 1998 Stanley Cup Finals. However, Ovechkin and the Capitals were finally able to silence all the haters in 2018 by finally winning their franchise's first Stanley Cup. The Detroit Red Wings 2005-2006 season. 4 years after winning the 2002 Stanley Cup, the Detroit Red Wings emerged as the most dominant team in the NHL's first season under its new salary cap following the lockout. With a record of 58 wins, 16 losses, and 8 overtime losses, the Red Wings finished with 124 points, which remains among the highest in NHL history. This was a Red Wings team that was about to embark on a significant transition as longtime captain Steve Yzerman would retire the following season, Brendan Shanahan would leave during free agency to go over to the New York Rangers, and an aging Chris Chelios wasn't the defensive force he once was. However, defenseman Nicklas Lidstrom was in his playing prime and would eventually take over the captaincy from Yzerman. Lidstrom finished the season with a career-high 80 points, winning his 4th James Norris Memorial Trophy in a career that would see him take home this award 7 times. One of the most exciting things about this team was the new core of young talent they had, led by Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg. In the 2005-2006 season, Datsyuk had a breakout performance with a team-leading 87 points, winning the Lady Byng Memorial Trophy for the first time of what would be an impressive 4 straight seasons. On top of that, Zetterberg finished second in points with 85 on that season. So this was a scary team you did not want to play against in that postseason. Making their way to the conference finals, the Red Wings faced off against the Edmonton Oilers led by Chris Pronger. To put this matchup into perspective, the Red Wings finished the regular season 29 points ahead of these Oilers. But that point differential no longer mattered. That was the regular season, and playoff hockey is another type of beast. The Oilers would end up getting the best of the Red Wings in 6 games as they eventually reached the 2006 Stanley Cup Finals. It was an unfortunate loss as the Red Wings saw 2 of their franchise stars leave after this heartbreaking run, but on the bright side, just 2 years later, Lidstrom, Datsyuk, and Zetterberg led that club to its 4th Stanley Cup in 11 seasons. The Edmonton Oilers 1985-86 season. By the 85-86 season, the Edmonton Oilers were basically the most dominant team the NHL has ever seen at that point. Having won their 2nd straight Stanley Cup the previous season, they appeared to be well on their way of joining the Montreal Canadiens, the New York Islanders, and the Toronto Maple Leafs as the only teams in league history to win 3 straight Stanley Cups. This Oilers team was the greatest offensive team in NHL history, scoring 426 goals during that 85-86 season, marking the 2nd highest total behind their all-time leading 446 goals in the 83-84 season. With a record of 56 wins, 17 losses, and 7 ties, the Oilers won the President's Trophy that season. There were a lot of contributing factors to this team's success, one being that the Oilers captain Wayne Gretzky was at the peak of his offensive capabilities and led the league with a career-high 215 points, which remains as the league's single-season points record. Gretzky won the Hart Memorial Trophy for the 7th straight year and the Art Ross for the 6th straight time. But putting Wayne Gretzky aside, the Oilers had a few more weapons in their lineup like Mark Messier, Jari Kurri, Glenn Anderson. Then when you look at who they had on defense, which was Paul Coffey and Kevin Lowe, plus goaltender Grant Fuhr, you cannot mess with this team. Sweeping the Vancouver Canucks in the division semifinals, the Oilers went on to face the Calgary Flames in maybe the most memorable moment that has ever happened throughout the Battle of Alberta. This series went a full 7 games, but it was the Oilers who were eliminated after one of the biggest mistakes ever made in an NHL playoff game happened. Defenseman Steve Smith banked an attempted pass off his own goalie and put the puck in his own net. Yeah, that was hard to watch. The Tampa Bay Lightning 2018-2019 season. After reaching the Stanley Cup Finals in 2015, then the Eastern Conference Finals in 2016, and again in 2018, the Tampa Bay Lightning established themselves among the most dominant regular season clubs in NHL history. During the 2018-2019 season, with a record of 62 wins, 16 losses, and 4 overtime losses, the Lightning finished atop the season's overall standings with 128 points, a full 21 points ahead of the second overall Calgary Flames. They tied the league record for most wins in a season and finished with the 4th most points in league history. This team was absolutely stacked, and it's no wonder why they went on to win 2 cups, but in this particular season, they just weren't ready yet. Nikita Kucherov had his career best performance that season, winning the Art Ross with 128 points, the Hart Memorial Trophy, and the Ted Lindsay Award. Teammate and brick wall of a goalie, Andrei Vasilevsky took home the Vezina that year, and Victor Hedman finished 3rd among voters for the James Norris Memorial Trophy, while captain Steven Stamkos and Braden Point each finished with 40 goals and 90 points. On top of these star performances, the Lightning also had an insane amount of production from their secondary players, as Yanni Gourde, Tyler Johnson, JT Miller, Ryan McDonough, and Alex Killorn all reached or exceeded the 40-point mark. Obviously, entering the postseason, the Lightning were the heavy favorites to win the Stanley Cup, which made this so much more painful to watch. Not only did they lose in the first round, but they were swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets, who finished 30 points behind the Lightning in the regular season. No one saw this coming. This was easily one of the biggest upsets in NHL history and a huge wake-up call for this Lightning team. Thanks for watching our videos. Don't forget to leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button.